We all face a similar problem. How do we keep pace? Our development methods must keep pace with an increasingly complex world. I'd like to blame it on Gordon Moore. It's probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago now, that he said that every 18 months they would double the processing power on a microprocessor chip or an integrated circuit. And they did that, frankly. For all practical purposes now, we see the total commoditization of hardware for computing services to the point where once upon a time there was a budget that would include capital expenditures and operating expenses. And the capital expenditures were a pretty big deal, but now they're not so much. If you've done any cloud computing, you recognize that the commoditization of hardware has reached a point now where, for all practical purposes, what's left is software. And software is eating the world. So we have more and more challenge with software, not less and less over time. Our development practices haven't kept pace. Agile shows the greatest promise, but as we all know, it was developed for small teams and it works really well in that context. We have to leverage the power of Agile development. But we need a new approach, and I think that approach is one that harnesses the power of Agile and Lean and applies to the needs of the enterprises who build the world's most important software and systems. The big stuff, big systems, things that go bump in the night, medical equipment, large-scale CRM systems, SaaS applications. We simply need more method and more construct than we've had in the past. So as you can tell, I've been at this a while. I've been for 40 years now. I worked on the same thing, developing really big systems in the most efficient and productive manner that we thought was possible. And 20 years ago, I didn't think it would be like this. I thought we would be sitting at these massively powerful CAD stations, which we have, and working with really powerful languages, third generation and fourth generation languages, which we also have, and graphical user interfaces. And I thought we'd be, building wireframes and selecting class libraries and dragging and dropping the results around the screen and using automation to develop the business logic to connect those thoughts together on behalf of the user. But it hasn't really developed that way. We're not dealing with that level of automation. I was in a customer context once upon a time and just kind of idling between meetings and stumbled across this slide. And frankly, for many of us, sometimes it feels more like this. Even then, in that session, someone shouted out, "Hey, at least they're co-located." And you have to admit, they are co-located. At least these people can get up and walk to the water cooler and have a conversation. Talk to another person, another programmer, if you will, or maybe the programming manager about the constructs that are necessary to build that application. We're distributed. We might have that many people. That would be a kind of a single Agile release train there, but it's probably in 3 countries, working in maybe 3 different spoken languages, 3 or 4 programming languages, 5 or 6 different platforms. So we don't have really the level of automation and the level of conceptual control we have. Instead, we create very large systems with millions and millions of lines of code, whereby an individual, any programmer or tester or anyone with access to the code base and with collective ownership, that's a lot of folks, can make a change that would potentially bring our system down. So it hasn't worked the way that I thought it would. I thought we would be working at a much higher level of abstraction than we actually are. And as I go around the world and I talk to people about building really large systems and ask them about how their retrospectives go, they all look pretty much the same. Hard to improve systematically, especially if we're only building systems or releasing systems annually. Goodness, what went wrong in the last year? A lot went wrong in the last year. Well, can we fix everything in the next year? Well, probably not. How do you pick? No real systematic way to improve what you're doing. Dependencies control delivery. Dependencies probably are the greatest single factor in cost of delay. And we underestimate those, or we think we understand it, but they move and they change. And who took care of that? Who worried about the fact that Team A needed something from Team B, or this large program here was dependent upon a deployed system that had some defects or hadn't properly fulfilled its functional requirements yet? Very little visibility in the process. Things are late, we feel they're late, 90% complete, and yet it's not really 90% complete because nothing has been integrated yet. Too early commitment to a design that didn't work. I'm going to talk about that a lot. I believe that and some of our phase gate software development and product development life cycles are really the root cause. That's why we have so much difficulty in our design. We commit too early. False positive feasibility. This should have worked. Well, it didn't. And we didn't find out until too late. Growth and complexity, goodness, massive software systems, purchase systems, SaaS systems, supplier-built systems, embedded systems, all kinds of application complexity, different programming languages, different programming styles, different programmers, different cultures that the software is developed in. It just isn't getting easier. It's getting harder. And our teams are distributed. If those of you who are watching this video know that once you have over 100 or so people, they're distributed by definition. They're not co-located. The third floor is not the same as the first floor. And the teams in Mumbai have a different operating culture, different time zones, maybe a 10 or 12 hour time zone difference, different management styles, different everything. We're all distributed. We're all over the world, and we have to work together. We have to create a social network that works in the presence of all that complexity. Late delivery. I like to ask the students in my class every time. I say, who's involved in a big software program? And lots of people. Most of them raise their hands. They raise their hands very high. I say, leave your hand up if it's going well. And all the hands, except maybe one, go down. And last time I was in class, I asked the student whose hand was still up, I said, well, congratulations, what's going on? And he said, well, we've just started. So I think we understand that our process is largely deficient. We have late delivery, and that's not even enough, right? Late delivery and late problems. So we're late in our delivery. The problems are discovered too late. We all go home feeling that we could have done a better job. We create some of the world's most spectacular systems that we couldn't even envision 5 years ago. And yet you go home at night and you don't feel great about your effort. Something's wrong with the process, and I just think it's kind of unfair that we build systems like that and yet still never really quite get the real satisfaction you can get from doing a job extremely well. So what's the root cause? Well, we all have our opinions. One of my favorites is our phase gate software development and product development life cycles aren't helping us reduce risk. If they were, we wouldn't year in and year out continue to see that set of problems. The interesting thing about this slide is that I could play this slide everywhere and everyone would recognize it. I was in Europe 4 to 6 months back and I was giving a talk at a big bank, one of the world's largest banks, and I was talking to about 200 developers and test automation personnel and their management. And I said, do you recognize these problems? And they said, of course, we deal with all those problems. I looked across the campus. There was another building from another company across the way, and it was an insurance company. It happened to be an acronym that I recognized. And I asked the team, I said, if I went over there and presented the same slide, would they have the same result? And the answer is, of course. So let's think about that for a second. If we see this everywhere in industry, is the problem your people? Is the problem at company A that our people just don't get it and we can't deliver systems well, big systems well? Or is there something wrong with the system? And when the system doesn't work well, one of the results is poor morale. And when you engage knowledge workers in an activity that they were just inspired for life to learn and to be challenged, continuously learn, they're lifelong learners, and the results aren't what they hope for, they don't feel good about their work, and that creates poor morale. So there's something wrong with the system. There's something fundamentally wrong with the way we're approaching the problem. And one of my heroes in this whole space is Deming, and you might think of him in statistical process control. He's very much a new age thinker, even in 1996. And when I read his book a year or so back, Out of the Crisis, I was frankly stunned by the insights that he had at that time. And one of his insights is that only management can change the system. If we think about our processes, our practices, the systems that we deploy, our procedures, they're not written by the people that use them. They're written by people that try to understand and try to help people that actually do the work. But every manager out there wants quality and productivity. But that's not enough, right? It's not enough that management commit themselves to quality and productivity. They must know what it is they must do. And I had a visceral reaction to that. I said, that's it. That's why I've spent the last decade of my life really working with executives and managers and talking to them about how to improve outcomes in applications and systems development. And later on in that same book, this is not a quote you can just pull off the web. You have to read the book to really get the depth of his thinking. He said, such a responsibility cannot be delegated. I thought that hit me viscerally as well. It's like, he's right. There's no way that a vice president or a general manager or development director can delegate the responsibility for quality and productivity to someone else. They really own the problem. And there was a vignette in that book a few pages later about a vice president of manufacturing. I'm not sure if it's an automotive company. I don't remember. I'm not even sure it was disclosed. Talking to another vice president in the same industry about the amazing progress that their company had made in terms of improving quality. And the VP who wasn't so fortunate said to the one that was, he said, "Hey, can I come visit your plant?" And the answer was absolutely. Come on down. I'd be happy to share my secrets. But if you can't come, send no one. Pretty clear what he meant by that, which is that if you're going to send delegates or others that report to you to address the problem of quality and productivity, don't bother, because they can't do it without their leadership. Only management can change the system. And these words ring true. They're really, frankly, the mantra that I work with all the time. We talk about the reasons things don't go well, we talk about impediments to development, and we talk about who can address that. Well, we can. We're the managers. We're the ones that own those systems, and we're the ones that can help if we know how to help people improve quality and productivity.